There has never been anything quite right about this situation. King Von's death tale has always felt incomplete, like a movie that cuts to credits before the last scene. From the flashing lights that night in Atlanta to the grainy surveillance tape that everyone has seen 1,000 times. Now, leaked material has come to light, and even the most cynical critics are taking notice. Updated files. Fresh video. According to new witnesses, the official story is not consistent. A tragedy can become a crime documentary unfolding in real time, and sadness can become obsession. Hip-hop fans are referring to it as the greatest enigma since Tupac and Biggie, and the more you learn about it, the more sinister it seems. It wasn't until last week that some believed they understood exactly how King Von died. Voice notes, phone logs, and screenshots are disseminated online more quickly than barbershop gossip, and each clip feels like a piece of a puzzle that has been tried to be hidden. Was this fate? Was it prepared? Was the public never supposed to know about it? The King Von tale has suddenly surfaced again, and this time it's not going to be buried, so whatever it is, the music industry is trembling once more. The shooting night is not the beginning of the Von case's saga. It begins months earlier in a city that is buzzing with anxiety and ambition. The Von case, as detectives would later refer to it, was meant to be straightforward. A young rapper was shot dead outside a nightclub. Cameras were rolling, witnesses were yelling, and it was the ideal tragedy for widespread social media consumption. But the fragments of something strange, evidence that would not remain silent, were hidden behind those headlines. At 3 a.m, a low-resolution video clip that was posted anonymously sparked the initial rumors. Only headlights and shadows were visible, but internet detectives claimed to have seen a second car that was not identified in the police report. Within hours, every frame was being analyzed by conspiracy pages. It was described as a decoy vehicle by some. It transported someone significant, according to others, whom the official chronology neglected to include. More people shared the video than any of the Von case's other songs combined. It was dismissed by the police as online noise. However, days later, a former traffic cam technician from the city disclosed a series of emails implying that, within minutes of the incident, many surveillance feeds from the same block had been inexplicably corrupted. Corrupt, like the evidence was infected with a virus at the most critical moment. That was a strange coincidence for a city that was already hostile to controversy. It served as assurance to supporters that the widely believed account had been altered for practical reasons. Digital battle rooms replaced online forums. Plotting camera angles, tracking bullet trails, and comparing timestamps like detectives in sweatpants were all done by amateurs. A streetlight that flickered at the incorrect time and an officer's body camera winking out at the crucial moment were among the irregularities they discovered. On their own, they were glitches. They appeared to be choreography when combined. The first leak that broke the hush was an audio recording purportedly recorded only minutes prior to the incident. Whether real or not, it went viral online. A shaky exchange between two male voices, one of them saying, "He ain't supposed to be here tonight." Theories were spreading like wildfire. Was the Von case the target? Has anyone been spied on? A random altercation, according to the official statement. That was not the case from the released tape. The anonymity only added to the appeal, as every source that journalists tried to confirm pointed to dead ends, deleted accounts, disappeared emails, and numbers that were no longer in service. Even mainstream media that refrained from speculating couldn't help but imply that there was something about the story that needed clarification. That phrase, "needed clarification," quickly became a meme and eventually a movement. Every fresh rumor was viewed by fans as a step closer to justice, and they printed it on shirts and made hashtags out of it. Insiders, meanwhile, started to disband. According to a stagehand who had worked on the Von case's last performance, the artist had been paranoid in the weeks before his passing, the Underground podcast reported. He had canceled engagements, hired new security, and, most eerily, recorded a voice message that said, "Check the cameras if anything happens." The podcast host played that piece with a theatrical flair, the kind of pause that makes listeners lean in. It was cut, remixed, and dissected all night long. People all wanted to think it was true. It was necessary for everyone to think that someone was accountable. The enigma was all the more alluring because it felt so familiar. The ghosts of Tupac, Biggie, and Jam Master Jay, names that will always be woven into the conspiracy fabric of hip-hop, were likened by fans. The Vaughn case, however, seemed contemporary, computerized, and endlessly replayable. Forever, every detail was trapped in algorithmic purgatory on the internet. Individuals became less trusting as more individuals watched. Screenshots of emails, purported ballistics reports, and even a partially redacted witness statement were released by an unknown Reddit account as the craze intensified. Despite the lack of official confirmation, every disclosure coincided uncannily with known facts. Internet users dubbed this mystery poster the archivist. Some believed it to be the former manager of the Vaughn case, while others claimed it was a renegade police officer. The archivist, whomever it was, knew too much. Nearly 10 minutes before the 911 call was recorded, police cruisers were seen circling the neighborhood, according to GPS data in one post. Another disclosed that the Vaughn case owed a six-figure debt to a local producer, which was settled just 2 days prior to the filming. Although they were embers, these weren't smoking guns. You get wildfire when you feed embers to a group of people who are addicted to anger. The department denied any wrongdoing in a news release. It didn't assist. The way it was phrased sounded corporate, robotic, and meticulously purified. The statement said, "We are still looking into every possibility." In the words of viewers, "We hope you stop asking questions. In the meantime." Anyone even vaguely associated with that night was being interviewed by underground channels. According to a club promoter, he observed two men in plain clothing close to the exit just before gunfire broke out. A valet attendant claimed that he was instructed to look away. Although none of the claims could be verified, they all added to the legend. The internet had shifted from seeking proof to creating scripture. Dave, an independent journalist known for exposing wrongdoing in the industry, made a short documentary called The Missing Frames. He disclosed that the club and the city did not own the 3 security cameras on the block. Rather, a private contractor connected to other entertainment establishments did. The week following the shooting incident, the contractor had secretly declared bankruptcy. Is it a coincidence or cleaning up? The latter, viewers concluded. Within 48 hours, 2 million people had viewed the video. However, a phone call was the catalyst that drove the story over the brink. Her voice trembled through a voice changer. Artificial yet real. As a woman posing as a former dispatcher leaked an internal email, cautioning cops not to communicate with media over the Vaughn incident. She stated, "They instructed us to destroy our log copies." I realized it was larger than us at that point. Even major networks had to deal with the commotion by this time. Panels discussed whether leak culture was advancing or undermining justice on a nightly basis. As one commentator put it, when did Reddit become the FBI? However, beneath that derision was unease, since the disclosures were no longer just unimportant noise. They were structured chaos that revealed flaws that the system was unable to hide. Vaughn Case's memory loomed larger than the man himself throughout it all. His songs, which were once hymns of survival and ambition, were rewritten as foreboding cautions. A TikTok trend went widespread after someone commented about watching shadows in the rear view. He foretold his own demise, according to fans who cited it as gospel. One thing was obvious to everyone, even those who made fun of the conspiracies. There was something off with the time frame. Too many missing minutes, too many corrupted files, and too many coincidences. Skepticism was transformed into a sport on the internet, and everyone wanted to win. Authorities said a formal announcement would be released shortly. The headlines were prepared by the reporters. However, behind closed doors, sources whispered that the case had been forced into silent review because of the leaked material, including the film, the memos, and the lost camera feeds. Nothing had changed on the official level. Everything, informally, had. The actual storm then started. By the time the sun rose, the internet had transformed into a virtual courthouse. Every post served as proof and every viewpoint as a judgment. With headlines like "New Twist in the Vaughn Case," fans claim cover-up, and officials stay silent amid leak storm, news outlets rush to stay up with the latest developments. But silence was no longer an option. The story was out of control. Before, no one had ever seen the angle from which the leaked footage spread like wildfire. It displayed a shadow that wasn't consistent with the others in the frame, a faint reflection in a nearby automobile window. That small detail triggered a surge of frenzy, despite the fact that it was barely noticeable. Was there another shooter? Barely noticeable. Was there another shooter? Another eyewitness? Or did someone stage the incident before the police showed up? The internet didn't hold out for responses. TikTok detectives shared side-by-side comparisons, superimposing timestamps and charting movement patterns like amateur investigators high on caffeine and adrenaline, while Reddit threads erupted with freeze frames, arrows, red circles, and bold comments that read, "Proof." It turned every frame into a hint and every rumor became gospel. In under 24 hours, the Vaughn case had transformed from a tragedy into an obsession. Even famous people who usually stay out of controversy started to weigh in. When a retired rapper said on Twitter, "They did Vaughn like they did Pac," it sparked 1,000 opinions. A producer at the top of the charts stated that he had heard the same thing from insiders. A podcast host then hinted that a power figure in the business was pulling strings behind the scenes. It blew everything up when Dave, the independent journalist who had published The Missing Frames, released Part 2. He disclosed emails that were exchanged a week prior to the massacre, in which a venue owner and a private security company discussed special clearance protocols for the particular night. That wording alone was enough to ignite comment sections. Special clearance protocols. Supporters saw it as a hint of something evil. Dave stated in a widely shared video that the Vaughn case wasn't random. It was practiced. His words rang out like gunshots despite his composed tone. Millions watched, debated, reshared, and analyzed the meaning of rehearsed. Was a setup his intention? A scheduled altercation? A botched cover-up? Social media was the match for the uncertainty which was the fuel. The archivist, an unknown user, came back in the interim. They released a PDF this time that had transcripts of alleged text conversations between two unidentified people about the green light. The texts were ambiguous and full of mistakes, but that didn't matter. The hashtag #QuashGreenLightTheory became popular all across the world in a matter of hours. Others claimed it was industrial jargon for getting permission from superiors to handle a problem, while others claimed it alluded to a planned hit. The commotion became so loud that even the authorities were unable to ignore it. A hurriedly planned news conference was full of awkward smiles and flashbulbs. There was no cover-up, no conspiracy, no corruption. The police had denied it all. But the chief paused when a reporter asked if all of the night's security footage was available for inspection. Any remaining credibility was completely destroyed by that 1-second wait. Videos of that hesitancy were all over the platforms. The internet dubbed it the blink, claiming it was evidence that the chief had recoiled under duress. The theories got out of hand. Evidence, some claimed, had been sold. The cassettes, according to others, were taken. According to one especially popular video, the tape was kept in a confidential archive under the direction of an executive shadow syndicate. It was a work of fiction, yet it had enough realism to become popular. Days later, the most bizarre turn of events occurred when a prominent talk show presenter called the archivist and asked him to make an anonymous appearance. Unexpectedly, the robotic voice stated, "I wasn't trying to expose the police." The audience grew hushed as I tried to preserve the truth. That night, there were witnesses who were never mentioned in the report, the voice went on. They were ordered out of town. One failed to arrive. It was a statement that rocked the fans. Who was the witness who went missing? Has this individual been silenced? Dead? Are you protected? Almost immediately, the assertion became canon, but no one knew. The internet had already made up its mind, even when investigators disputed it. Denial is equivalent to guilt in the realm of viral truth. Then followed the storm of celebrities. A-list producers shared conspiracy threads with cryptic emojis. Rap superstars began uploading old images, and influencers made emotional tribute videos with names like "What They Don't Want You to Know About Vaughn." With each post, the insanity gained more legitimacy. Documentary filmmakers scrambled to make money. Streaming services battled for the story's rights. A multi-part special titled "The Vaughn Files: What Really Happened" was announced by one media outlet, and fans quipped that Netflix had taken the role of justice. Although no one publicly stated it, insiders whispered that the leaked material had compelled them to reopen the case. Under review, this was a more significant development than the memes. The official story began to crumble as pressure increased. It wasn't an admission, but it was blood in the water when a retired cop acknowledged off-record that the timeline contained minor inconsistencies. Commentators jumped in. Memes with captions like "missing half the truth" made fun of the term minor inconsistencies. Then, suddenly, another video appeared. It shows a blurry-faced individual leaving the scene just before mayhem broke out. A well-known local promoter who disappeared soon after the shooting had the same walk as the figure. People were doxing him, examining his body language, and even comparing his shoes in a matter of hours. The promoter's social media accounts were deleted in a single night. The narrative suddenly turned from being about leaks to being about ghosts. Ghost truths, ghost footage, and ghost witnesses. Confusion grew with each new revelation. The Vaughn case was becoming more complex rather than more obvious. Dave, the journalist, continued to provide subtle updates throughout this entire ordeal, weaving facts with ideas. When truth and lies mix long enough, the audience stops caring which is which, he said, a statement that has resonated with everyone. They are simply looking for the next twist, and that is precisely what transpired. There was no distinction between entertainment and reporting. Channels surged with ad income, platforms made money off of clicks, and interaction increased for everyone who brought up the Vaughn case. Anger became a commodity. Even those who advocated for justice started to question whether it could withstand virality. However, some unyielding facts were visible behind the cacophony. Records showed that evidence logs had been tampered with. After the incident, several city employees resigned within weeks. An inventory had a hard drive with the label Nightblock Cam Aero 3, but it was never found. These were true. They weren't hearsay. They also identified a gap that the official report was unable to address. The news had spread around the world by the end of the month. In segments on The Digital Murder Mystery, news outlets from around the world discussed how social media was changing investigations in real time. Legislators pledged oversight committees. Demonstrations were organized by fans. Even the Vaughn case's relatives expressed their desire for both answers and peace. But the business fell silent. Labels ceased to comment. Performers unfollowed one another. Agreements were put on hold. Everyone seemed afraid that they would be the next leak. It was ironic enough to shatter glass. All the witnesses had been reduced to shadows in a case involving exposure. A new file titled The Last Call showed up on the archivist's feed just when it looked like everyone had seen every perspective imaginable. Nobody knew what was inside. Its uploader was unknown. One thing became evident, though, as the number of downloads reached the millions. The tale wasn't over. All it did was mutate. Because one man's death was no longer the focus of the Vaughn case. It had turned into the most popular enigma in the world, combining greed, grief, and the human desire for an unknowable truth. When the last call file finally surfaced, the internet had already fallen too far down the rabbit hole to be stopped. With live-streamed countdowns, millions of people anticipated what would be within while they awaited the download to unlock. Some believed the murderer would be exposed. A few others thought it was a fake. They discovered a 3-minute audio recording that sounded like a farewell when the file eventually opened, rather than a confession or a picture. You can't fix what was planned. That one remark exploded over all timelines like an explosion, spoken in a man's distorted but impassioned voice. Was the voice of the Vaughn case himself? Is it a copy? Whoever keeps leaking the evidence used it as a ruse. Uncertainty created its own kind of truth because no one knew. Mysteries were more precious than proof in the online court. Reporters attempted to confirm where the audio came from. It had been recorded weeks prior to the shooting, according to waveform analysis, but the file name, metadata, and geolocation had all been erased. Without tracing it, someone wants the world to hear it. Professionals were the ones with that level of accuracy, not amateurs. The leak appeared to be a tactic rather than an act of revolt. After that, the archivist disappeared. No signal, no trace, no new posts. A trail of digital fingerprints led nowhere, and their account vanished as abruptly as it had emerged. Others asserted that they had been silenced. Others indicated they had finished their work. Again, conspiracy pages were lit up, this time debating if the archivist was the last whistleblower or a part of a cover-up. Meanwhile, the actual world was affected by the aftermath. The newscasters who made fun of the disclosures were now expressing regret. After rejecting the article, independent journalists started going over their notes again. A local politician called for the case files to be formally audited. According to sources inside the police department, some of the film had been withheld for security reasons. This means that although they had it, they didn't want anyone to view it. This validated what fans had long assumed. The lost tape was then linked to a data server that belonged to a now-defunct entertainment security organization, according to the unexpected findings of a private investigation firm that was engaged by a documentary studio. It just so happened that the club where the Vaughn case died had the same corporate location. The room was frozen, but it wasn't evidence of guilt. All of a sudden, rumors of industry involvement stopped sounding absurd. They sounded well planned. The public's reaction to the revelation was divided. The case was perceived by half as a plot to silence a growing celebrity. The other half thought that a myth so strong that it had altered reality had been created by the internet. One thing, however, was universally acknowledged. The Vaughn case was no longer merely a cold file. It was no longer a sleeping ghost, but a real one. Reluctantly, Dave, the reporter who had been following the story from the start, took on the role of investigator. The truth is never lost. It's just buried under everyone's version of it. He became a cult icon after delivering a monologue that is still quoted in his final film, Echoes of the Vaughn Case. However, he vanished as well after that video. He stopped responding to communications, moved offline, and erased his accounts. According to rumors, he was threatened. Others asserted that he had just had enough. His quiet, in any case, was more weighty than any words. It was the conclusive evidence that something about the Vaughn case was too risky to complete. A few months later, the official report subtly revised its conclusions. This small modification ignited the internet, replacing the term random altercation with complex circumstances. A complicated situation? What was the meaning of that? It meant everything to the fans. It was a covert acknowledgement that the facts had been twisted. The world continued to revolve, however, as the case was being argued online. The Vaughn case's songs returned to the top of the charts. His old lyrics were reinterpreted as cryptic messages after initially being perceived as unfiltered street anecdotes. On protest artwork, a statement about watching snakes in designer shoes was abruptly cited. His tunes doubled, then tripled in popularity. He was immortalized by death, but mythological by mystery. But the celebrity was like salt on the wound for his family. In interviews, they stated that they preferred peace to news. However, each time they requested that the public continue, a new leak emerged, rekindling the fire. Someone, somewhere, seemed to be preventing closure. The family eventually hired a private detective, and the finding they uncovered altered everything. They discovered a backup drive in a forgotten evidence locker with the label Archive B. Parts of that night's tainted security footage were included. There were a few frames that stuck out, but the most was static, noise, and mayhem. A phone was raised by a silhouette in one corner of the screen, and it was recording. And there was the gleam of a police badge next to it, clearly visible. The inference was obvious. Rather than rescuing, someone from the reaction crew had been filming. Just before the shooting, the video stopped. Even though the disc was logged, the copy never ended up in the official files. The department declined to comment at the time of the announcement. Once exposed on live TV, the chief quietly retired for personal reasons. The nightclub's ownership moved. In theory, the case was still open. In the minds of millions, however, the decision had already been made. The Vaughn case was no coincidence. It was a concert piece. The industry is still plagued by the narrative years later. Every up-and-coming artist who rises too quickly or dies too quickly is compared to it. They caution one another backstage, "Don't become like the Vaughn case." His name has come to represent the worst aspects of celebrity that people like to avoid discussing until it's too late. According to mythology, the archivist reappears every few years under different names, revealing details about unsolved cases that the world has yet to discover. Some refer to it as justice. Addiction is another term for it, because people now seek the excitement of nearly discovering the truth as much as the truth itself. And that is the story's cruelest element. Not all corruption was revealed by the Vaughn case. Our need for drama, our fascination with mystery, and our incapacity to resist seeing tragedy as entertainment were all revealed by it. The files and the video don't show the actual cover-up. It's in how effortlessly we transform suffering into entertainment and proof into spectacle. Audiences were indifferent to the guilt by the time the last documentary was broadcast. They merely desired resolution, but there was never any closure. With the final words, "Case status, ongoing," the screen went blank. Perhaps it was always supposed to end that way, with an echo that never goes away but without justice or peace. Because in a world when everything is clicks and cacophony, stillness does not bury truth. It is lost in the cacophony. Another enigma is suddenly lost in the midst of chaos, hashtags, and half-truths. A warning that popularity can outlive truth and that evidence can spread more quickly than justice ever could. The Vaughn case started out as tragedy but concluded as prophecy. You now have a choice. Will you continue the search, or will you scroll past? As if you were breaching the algorithm's wall of silence, hit the like button. Leave a remark and share your thoughts on what you believe actually occurred, as every theory counts and every viewer contributes to the inquiry. Prior to the next revelation, which always comes, subscribe. In this area, the noise never stops, the leaks never stop, and the files never close. Here at Scoop X, every beat conceals a hint, and the truth is spoken in whispers. Keep in mind that in this game, strategy is what matters, not peace. Every altered video, every post that has been removed, and every no comment is a stepping stone to a worse place. The next mystery has already begun to record, and is only waiting for someone who is bold enough, or insane enough, to hit play. In the empire of rhythm and rumor, legends don't die. They reverberate, so remain vigilant, keep asking questions, and never forget this. Let me sign off on behalf of Scoop X.